Good morning, everybody. Thanks for showing up, and hope everybody's not too bleary-eyed. Wanted to thank Cheetah for doing the dinner last night, because especially in my first venture over 20 years ago, we used them as our ESP when it was Cheetah Mail. I think they still owe us a make good, maybe? No, they were great. So I'm Louis Gersh. I'm the founder and chief stamp licker of PebblePost, and we invented programmatic direct mail. I'm not sure how many of you in the audience actually know exactly what we do. Can we just see a quick show of hands if you do? Pretty good amount. So I'm not up here to do an advertorial about PebblePost. We're up here to share some research, but I think it'll help give you some context too. A lot of what we've been doing in trying to map digital to direct mail and into home is, we call it our 90-90-90 thesis. And that's, we believe 90% of actionable one-to-one intent data is now online and available to use, like behavioral targeting and retargeting. But 90% of meaningful and higher purchase decisions happen at home. And then the third 90 is that 90% of purchases happen in the physical world, right, at physical retail, although with DTC in a category, a lot's moving online. So we did a bunch of research around some of this that we thought would be really interesting for the DTC crowd, and that's what we're here to go over today. Oops, I realized I have the clicker. So first, when we look at the physical world, and I'm sorry, I have to look at some notes because we have a lot of new content. We have a lot of data that we're going to share in the research and the stats for you. So direct-to-consumer brands we're seeing are causing a lot of disruption, but in order to scale, a lot of them are also moving to the physical world, right? They start with, a lot of them, in the virtual or digital world for creating their brand, but then they migrate to the physical world for what they do. And they're realizing to create that end-to-end experience about touching with the consumer, they really need to leverage that, right? So when we look, for example, where I live in Soho. How many people been to Soho, New York, recently? Shopping mecca, right? You don't want to be there on a weekend if you live there. Bit of a nightmare on the sidewalks. But if you look at this is just a smattering over the last, say, couple of months to couple of years, what has moved in there. And these are predominantly DTC brands with pop-up stores, flash sales, things like that. And they actually drive traffic there as a destination. There is a lot of foot traffic in Soho as a destination, but we also see, because we do work with a lot of these brands, people are coming there as an appointment and a destination to go, right? And again, 90% of spend is still in the physical world. A lot of these, if you look at, are in the IAB 250, right? I'm sure a lot of you have seen that recent report, and the IAB working with a lot of DTC brands. So we think it's pretty clear that the digitally native brands are expanding their presence beyond digital, and they're doing it physically and going into retail, but there's a bus stop missed, right? And that's going in a home and having physical in a home. What we find interesting is usually the first time they have a physical impression or physical touch with their customer, from a consumer to a customer, is when the product arrives, right? Not before, where in traditional retail, that was not the case, right? So we looked at that and said, this is a big opportunity, right? Especially from the world of digital with one-to-one intent data. So what did we find in our research? We looked in that middle 90, and we found through that 88% of purchase decisions, about the 90 that we projected, actually are involved at the home, right? And 89%, sorry, of those purchase decisions involve a lot of planning. They cull a lot of information. Considered purchase levels are also coming down. This is a big part of it. It used to be considered purchase was equated mostly with economics and a higher price. The economic level is coming down, and the emotional risk is actually going up because people don't want to waste their time or their money regardless of the cost. So we're seeing a lot more of the planning at home, where people go online and search. For a moderate considered purchase, it can be 10 to 12 information sources are checked online for something as simple as a box of granola bars. For something more higher end, like a financial account or a car, 22 to 24, right? So that's a lot of sources, and part of it is because it's immediate and free, and when you see your search results, you're also forced to consider things. Think about the granola bars. Does it have yogurt? Does it have raisins? Is it honey and oat? You might not have thought of that. Now you have to consider it, right? So considered purchase is moving down in terms of what's traditional on the economic side, but moving up in terms of the emotional side. That fits really well with the experience desired by a digitally native brand or anything direct to consumer, right? Second, I gotta go back. So we also found 53% of consumers involve their spouse in the purchase. There's a whole theme here that most decisions at home involve someone else, right? You might live with a spouse, you might have kids, you might not. But when you're at home and doing all that considered research, you oftentimes reach out via text, via email, on your phone and say, hey, check this out. What do you think of this? Is it the right one? You cull your information, you bring it in a home, you consider it, and you consult with others. 88% of those decisions involve that at various levels. And if anybody has kids, you know you can get crushed if you pick the wrong brand. I have two, 10 and 12, and trust me, nothing triggers them like drunken sailors until I pick the wrong brand of something. It's a revolt. So if you want to get your message in a home to spark those impactful purchase decisions, we looked, and that's what led us to direct mail. There's two really big ways of getting in a home with messaging, right? TV and direct mail. So what we did is couple the two, and that's what we started to research in the results we've been finding. So, and direct mail, for those who don't know, it's been and is the largest ad spend next to TV and the highest response rate of any media you can buy. Always has been, still is, right? But it's historically been latent data off demographic lists or psychographic lists, geographic lists. Now it's bridged into the world of interest and intent data. Totally different, right? Brings it from demand generation top of funnel to mid-funnel engagement with messaging. That's been a big shift in a lot of the stuff we've been looking at. So 61% we found in our research you find it influential in their decisions. That's traditional direct mail. Imagine when it's relevant at home. We call what happens when you go digital to direct mail, you survive the sort because you're relevant when you show up at home, and you go into the short stack. The short stack is what people save to follow up on later. If you're in the short stack, you're in the game, right? And you're shifting the dynamic for the consumer because they go back and act on the media when their situation's predisposed to take that action. You're not disrupting them with digital ads when their situation most often is not predisposed to take action, right? There's a lot that digital is really good for. There's a lot regular direct mail is good for. What we found in doing this and going in a home, it behaves very differently, oftentimes much more powerfully. So we found it plays a central role in this process by connecting the dots. And from home, one of the best things with physical mail, you can go to 100% of purchase channels, right? You can take that piece and use it as a reminder, put it in your purse, take it to work, stop on the way home, leave it on the counter. We joke nobody ever taped a banner ad to their fridge and said, honey, is that the right one, right? We used to forward emails, print them out even. They're still used a lot for messaging. Email has a great place in this to augment. But with the physical media, right, you can save it and follow up where and when you want at any purchase channel. Desktop web, mobile web, in-app, mail order, telephone order. Something like telephone order you might think isn't as big, but in cruises, for example, it's like 85% of their conversions. So various categories in physical world, of course, at retail, bank branch, car lot, et cetera. So what we did, let me hop ahead. Oops, sorry about that. So we invented programmatic direct mail, and what we basically do is we take all the interest and intent data, we run a behavioral targeting platform against it. We're able to transform about 70%, up to 70% of that site traffic to a physical address, and then dynamically render a run of one personalized and relevant piece of direct mail that zip sorted into a postal hub in under 24 hours in a home. The key there is that you're bridging that one-to-one actionable intent data, and you're able to get the physical media into home quickly. And others are following us doing this. This isn't a pitch for us, there are others. But it can drive such a different behavior at home when we find that, right? So we feel like it really bridges the best to drive much higher conversions and much better engagement of behavior with that. So some of the benefits we've also identified when we started working with the brands, especially DTC, it's relevant and respectful, unlike what people consider junk mail, right? It's also, we joke the bots don't have mailboxes and shop on Bloomies, right? So you're avoiding a lot of fraud in the traffic. Anything that goes to an address, you can sync to the CRM data of the brand. With that, you not only know who's a customer versus who's a prospect, as opposed to necessarily by cookie, but you can also identify unrecognized customers and sync those to the CRM. Again, totally different behavior and how a marketer would use that for messaging and develop their campaigns to drive into home. So we look at this hands-on approach, as we call it, to sending your messaging as a brand into home where people share the information, think about it, cull it, communicate with others to make their decision, and then go purchase anywhere. It creates a physical opportunity to connect with the consumer in the home where that isn't possible for many of these brands before their product shows up. So it's a first chance to take that step into the home and into the hands. And as I said before, consumers can act on their own terms, which is very different than a lot of what they experience in the pure digital world. So a couple of the key points when we look at that, you're creating this brand experience, combining the relevancy of digital with the impact of high brand impact physical media into home. It does behave like cash flow positive direct response, like typical direct mail, but it's coupled into this high brand impact with the combination. Reaching consumers in a home where those purchase decisions are made, we're finding more and more as we dig into the data and we work with the brands. We've done probably 20 case studies, and it is fascinating every time we do it, the more we learn about how this behaves like a new channel. It's not digital, it's not direct mail. It's really something new. And we had marketers telling us that when we were first testing it and working on it. Using that digital data for the relevant direct mail really helps to drive those conversions. And success isn't a zero-sum game. It's got to be across all the channels that are being worked on. So that's kind of the highlight of the research, especially around the decisions at home that we wanted to share. And I wanted to open up to any questions about what we do, because we've worked with some of the brands in the room, a lot we haven't, and we're just learning more and more every day. Sure, question over here.
Okay, hold on. Well, we got you live on tape here too, so hold on one second.
Thank you very much. Like the approach you guys are taking. Oh, sorry, Brant with Blue Dot. We do modern furniture. What is the time to home? So they take their action on site. How long till they actually get a direct mail piece in the mail?
So we focused on that earlier. It varies based on the different providers that are out in the market. It was important to us early on. We get it zip sorted into a postal hub with first-class postage in under 24 hours from virtually every day's site activity. We do look-back windows also to include other people that we feel like should be added. But for every day's traffic that we process into a hub in under 24 hours, so it shows up as low as 3 to 5 days, as long as 5 to 7 days. We use first-class postage because we feel like the immediacy. It gives digital the chance to run again. I think it has different channels. Digital's great in that first 48 to 72 hours, right? After that period, it tends to peter off. That's when the high brand impact physical media shows up in a home. So it really is a perfect complement for that person who didn't jump back because they were retargeted or they got their email update or whatever other things were being used for them. They can consider it and act on it when they want to. We see attribution windows go out from that. We can track the day the mail arrives. Most people here probably don't know that. There's a little barcode on the bottom of every piece of mail, and that allows you to track it through the USPS. So we know to pretty much the day when every piece arrives to a household, and from that we can start an attribution window. It typically goes 60 days, right? on it. And one of the keys with the attribution is not just tracking a return user by a cookie, but taking transaction files. This is one of the benefit in this as a new channel. Identity Link and others that are working on mapping individuals, we look at it by household. So we know a household we mailed, or this as a channel does, and you're able to then sync that back to a transaction file. So anything card not present, for example, e-commerce, you have to get a name and address, right? Or they can't check out. They have to have a billing address, they have to have a shipping address. You're able to match that back to the households that were mailed. Anything in store where it's a registered gift card, loyalty, rewards card, or if they use a coupon code, barcode scan, you're able to take that back and tie it to the time it got to home and what the attribution window was as well. So that's where we look at as a threaded process. It's very different than cookie to click to checkout, right? And we found that interesting in the reporting and analytics in our BI team in how to create the methodologies of what to measure, because it's also not demand generation, where if you pull a bunch out, they were a 0 in a demographic list because they had no idea the mail was going to, that they didn't express interest or intent already. Any other questions? Yes.
Hold on.
This is Gihan from Ministry of Supply. I was wondering, do you find that it's most effective for customer retention or on the acquisition side, given that you need mailing addresses?
Both, to be honest. So if we saw a problem in developing this channel early on, it was that some of the results seemed too good to be true because it's such an odd combination, right, in it. So a lot of marketers use it remarketing to existing customers. And because anybody who can be mailed must be able to be synced to your CRM. So you have virtually almost 100% accuracy on an existing customer for remarketing, on a registered user, or on a prospect off the site, which is quite unique from website traffic, right? So we found brands using it for all three different categories. For brand site retargeting, where we started, we're moving into other categories of the product, but that's not why I'm here. What we found at home in really studying it is the behavior is very much the same. Surviving that sort, going in the short stack, making an appointment on your time. When do you want to go back to the brand? And when do you want to make the purchase? Where you want it, when you want it, how you want it. Is it desktop web, mobile web, an app, going to store, et cetera? It's on your control. So that we feel like that's a key reason that getting in a home is why it works for all three of those categories. Most of the brands use it heavily for prospecting, right? It's the most valuable. And it's a very high return on ad spend and validated with Lyft. So they look at it as just acquiring off a website visit, and then they have the LTV, right, going forward. Any other questions about what we're doing or the space that we've been working on? It's been fun. It's only been about 4 years since we sent the first piece of programmatic direct mail and started working on this. And we've been working with a lot of the marketers to help us learn and understand how it's working, why it's working, how to best use it, where it is. We welcome all feedback. We have a lot of case studies, and we're really just trying to work with everybody to help develop the channel. So thanks for your time. Thanks for checking out our research.
Louis, thank you.